welcome every one of you. I hope you believe me when I say that I really missed you guys, and I'm really happy to be back today with you and to continue our great work. On that, I will call the meeting to order. So welcome to meeting number 13 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food, person to Standing Order 1082, and the motion adopted by the committee on October 24th, 2020. The committee is resuming its study on processing capacity. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House of Order of January 25th, 2021. And therefore, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in the new webinar format. Webinars are for public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members may have noticed that the entry to the meetings was much quicker and that they immediately entered as an active participant. All functionalities for active participant remain the same. Staff will be non-active participant only and therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshot or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Alors en français,
And in order to guarantee the smooth running of the meeting, I'd like to share some rules with you. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. At the bottom of your screen, you can choose between English or French on the floor. With the most recent version of Zoom, you can now speak in the language of your choice without having to select the corresponding language channel. You will also notice that the platform's Raise Your Hand function is now more easily accessible on the main toolbar if you wish to speak or alert the chairperson. Now, if this option does not work, I suggest that members and witnesses who wish to speak should turn on their cameras and physically raise their hands. The clerk of the committee will keep a list of members and witnesses who wish to speak. For members participating in person, proceed as you would normally do when the full committee meets in person in a committee room. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available during the meeting. And at the bottom of your screen, you can choose between the floor, English or French. Members who participate in person must do as they would normally do if all committee members were meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for wearing masks and health protocols. Before you speak, please wait until I name you. And if you're participating by video conference, click on the microphone to turn off the mute mode. The mics of participants in the room will be monitored as usual by the Deliberations and Verification Officer. I remind you that all comments from members and witnesses should be directed to the chair. When you do not have the floor, mute your microphone.
I guess online and virtual, there's nobody in the actual meeting room. So I think we have everybody on the screen. So with that, I would like to welcome our first panel. And from Olimel LP, Mr. Richard Davies, Senior Vice President, Sales and Marketing. Welcome, Mr. Davies. And also from Scotian Cattle Company, Anthony Eichelboom, I hope I pronounced your name right, Drover. So with that, we shall start with Mr. Davies for 7.5 minutes to do your opening statement. Go ahead, Mr. Davies.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Honorable
Good afternoon, MPs, chairman, members of the Agriculture and Agri-Food Committee of the House Commons. Thank you for this invitation. I'm Richard Davies, and I'm the main VP for Sales and Marketing in Olimel, and the main shareholder is the Solio Cooperative Group, which was previously known as the Coop Fédérée. We are the #1 pork producer in Canada, and we're also the #1 exporter of pork meat. We're recognised in many countries as having superior quality, and we export to over 65 countries. Drawing on our deep roots in Quebec, Olymel is also solidly anchored in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and New Brunswick. And we offer direct jobs to 15,000 Canadians. Our annual turnover is $4.5 billion, and we generate very significant economic spin-offs for our regions and throughout the value chain in all of our sectors. The Honourable Agri-Food and Agriculture Minister, Marie-Claude Bibeau, has an ambitious target to increase total Canadian agri-food exports from around $67 billion in 2020 to $75 billion by 2025. It would be easier to achieve this objective if the government, together with industry, removed the barriers as quickly as possible that are putting a brake on this ambitious aim. I'm now going to talk about certain issues confronting our industry, and I'm going to start with an issue which is the mother of all issues, namely labour. This is a key issue that is absolutely vital, not just for Olymel, but for the whole agri-food sector. Before the current pandemic, we were already faced with a serious labour shortage. And given the growth potential and the massive investments that we've made over the last few years in our business, we are able to create thousands of new jobs at all of our locations in Canada. We offer stable jobs with very competitive conditions and in regions that sorely need these jobs. Just to put this into perspective, we currently need to confirm 1,200 hires per year over the next few years to react to the predicted turnover rate and boomers who are going to go off and take their retirement, as well as negative shifting demographics. Moreover, we currently need another 1,200 hires to get our plants up to capacity and optimize past investments. And finally, there's another 1,200 hires that we need to make to meet future opportunity needs and projects that have already been identified. Thus, over and above its current 15,000 jobs, Olymel has needs in the next months equivalent to around 3,000 to 4,000 additional jobs in our regions. Obviously, our inability to find labour is a major obstacle to our expansion and our growth. Without enough labour, we will have to turn down certain markets, which means less jobs and less investment. This will also mean that processors from other countries will quickly jump in and take our place on foreign markets, as well as here in Canada, due to the labour shortage. So it's the whole value chain that's impacted by this labour shortage. We're already working with local elected officials and regional administrations to make them even more welcoming for newcomers coming into the regions that want to revitalise their economies. In the last few years, Olymel has welcomed a considerable group of temporary foreign workers. These workers that we found at the other end of the earth are very motivated to seek out a better life here in Canada. The Temporary Foreign Workers Programme is restricted to a cap of 10,000 per facility. We've been pleading for years for this cap to be raised to 20%. We would also like to see a reduction in the bureaucratic delays that are slowing down the running of the programme. Since the start of the pandemic, our employees have done amazing work to meet the call of governments to maintain our processing activities as an essential service. We are very much the extension of the farms, and our slaughterhouses are the necessary culmination for farmers' activities. The issue of labour is not just a vital one, but it's also an urgent issue. Turning now to different issue. Because of the current pandemic, we've had to bring forward our modernisation plans in developing new technologies, as well as integrating robots and automation of our operations. Even if robotisation, automation are not designed to replace labour, if industry wants to remain competitive and efficient, we have to step up the introduction of these tools, and that requires research and significant investment. We believe that the Canadian government has to support exporting businesses in this path by giving them appropriate support programs that are easily accessible and are also comparable with the programs offered by the governments of our main competitors. And then there's also obstacles to entry to our priority markets. That's another issue that's increasingly restricting our export capacity. For example, our access to the Chinese market has been disturbed for several months. So that's 70% of the Canadian total production that's no longer admissible or eligible to gain entry onto the most important market in the world. And certain technical issues have to be resolved that can be easily resolved, but the political relations are certainly not going to help to resolve and lift the suspensions. For example, our plant in Red Deer in Alberta has been footing the bill since the 28th of April 2019. And here in Canada, another important issues emerging in terms of relations between mass retail and Canadian processors. The Canadian government could certainly play a role to promote a better balance of power, as has been asked by most of the players in the processing industry. And here I'd like to talk about attempts by certain large retailers to impose on processors certain market conditions in a unilateral way, which could put their viability at risk. We believe that the development of a code of good practice between the players in mass retail and processing would be an advantage for everyone, in particular for Canadian consumers. When faced with the same issue, several other countries have already intervened to correct this situation. Finally, to turn to the present climate, the current pandemic has forced businesses to continue operating. They've had to adapt quickly to new conditions, in particular from a health point of view. We pulled out all of the stops to protect the health of our employees, even if we've not been able to avoid certain periodic outbreaks. We think, like the Meat Council of Canada has already recommended back in December, that employees in food processing, particularly in the meat sector, should have priority access to vaccination, as we've seen in other sectors where this type of solution has already been developed. So to round off, I've summarised the main highlights of my speech in order to respect the time limit. Ollie is, of course, available to give you more information on these questions. And I would like to thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Eichel Boom for 7.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr.
Monsieur Eikelenboom, vous avez 7 minutes et demie, allez-y.
Well, good afternoon, and I'd like to say thanks for being invited on this committee. I'd say my speech is going to be more of maybe of an overlook of what we do here in Nova Scotia, and then I'll take some questions regarding what I've said. So I guess in saying that, my name is Anthony Eikelenboom, and I'm from Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. I own and operate Scotian Cattle, which has been in operation for approximately 10 years. We are a buyer throughout Nova Scotia. I'm also a partner in Cowtown Cattle Company, which has been in operation for 4 years and is a buyer maritime-wide. Cowtown also accepts animals from other buyers within the maritime provinces and some in Quebec and Ontario. We travel around or Scotian, we travel around the province twice weekly doing business with roughly 160 of the 200 dairy farms in Nova Scotia. When I started the Scotian Cattle Company, we were only buying replacement heifers. Over the past 10 years, we've grown, and now we buy a large percentage of cull cow and the bob calves here in Nova Scotia. Historically, before there were markets for Holstein bull calves and replacement heifers. However, now with the markets drying up for those replacement heifers and with the new transport regulations, it is presently near impossible. And starting February 2022, it will be absolutely impossible to ship the Holstein calves into the veal market into Quebec. New regulations have been put into effect where the maximum amount of time a calf can be on a truck is 12 hours. Calves must then be offloaded, fed, and rested. We all know where Nova Scotia stands logistically, what this means is that we are no longer able to ship those Holstein calves to Quebec into that veal market. I guess what we're doing to fix that problem here, we're telling the farmers, or we're encouraging the farmers to breed their cows to beef bulls. The result is a crossbred calf, which is 50% Holstein and 50% beef. This specific type of calf gives the farmer and us the opportunity to sell the calves to local feedlots. In order for dairy farmers to operate, it's necessary for their cows to be bred and calved yearly. Because we are unable to ship the Holstein calves, we're encouraging farmers to breed the top 1/3 of their herd to the female sexed semen to ensure heifer replacements for the farm. Then we're telling the farmers, or promoting the bottom 2/3 of their herd to breed those animals to the sexed male beef semen, and that will hopefully ensure that we can sell their calves. This will, by doing all of that, folks, this will hopefully fix the transportation issue in regards to transporting the baby calves. However, once those crossbred calves have matured to an ideal market weight, we're not going to be able to process them here in Nova Scotia. Therefore, we will need to sell them out of province at a decreased cost. And as you all know, trucking is very high nowadays. In addition to these calves, we're also now limited to the number of cull cows because of the new transport regulations that we're able to ship on trucks, and also of the different classes of cows. We have to pay more attention to the age and the condition of the animals. This leads us to processing more cows in the province, and the provincial plants are also running at near capacity or near full capacity. Most of them are full capacity. I think all this goes back to why we're here today, processing capacity and capability. If we were able to have a federally inspected plant here in the province, which we do not at the present time, it would drastically change the entire picture. Farmers will then have the luxury of selling their animals to the federal plant, which will in turn give them more money for their animals, as the federal plant can sell outside of the province. It allows us cattle dealers to sell more animals and put more money into the farmers' pockets. It also lowers my cost of transportation. In closing, a federal processing plant in the province is necessary. To do it through the private sector, it would be difficult given the economics and the scale and the small margins. However, with government funding, we should be able to change the current state and make it a viable business for all parties involved, from the farmer to the table. There's no doubt that the provincial governments need to play a leadership role. However, the federal government could be a conveyor or provide support through a COA or through the Canadian Agriculture Partnership. I guess that's it for my speech. Thank you very much for listening, and I can take questions whenever questions are allowed.
Thank you, Mr. Agri-Food. And now we'll start our question round. And for 6 minutes, the first one, le premier, c'est Monsieur Lehoux. Allez-y pour 6 minutes, Monsieur Lehoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. And I would like to wish a Happy New Year to all witnesses and all committee members. So I have a question for Mr. Davis. You spoke of an important labor shortage that existed way before COVID. And so the 10% windfall, or the 10% of workers that you would be able to go and hire abroad, is that an important issue? It's an important issue for all our regions. The interpreter regrets, but the sound is of too poor quality to ensure interpretation.
Même au Québec et en partie en Ontario.
OK. Est-ce que la ministre...
Is the minister aware of the situation, the agriculture minister?
Les ministres avant ont été sensibilisés et interpellés régulièrement sur cet enjeu-là depuis belle lurette, je dirais.
OK. Est-ce que vous savez, M. Davis, si...
Mr. Davis, do you know if the agriculture minister and immigration ministers spoke or not?
Ça serait plus notre vice-président au niveau des ressources humaines, là, mais
OK.
on entend parler régulièrement, là, c'est top of mind, c'est constant.
Vous avez parlé aussi de la...
You also spoke of modernization, robotization. According to you, what problems are you encountering when you try to modernize your operation?
Puis, si on veut aller en mode accéléré, il va y avoir des enjeux de capitaux, ça c'est certain. Donc, je dirais que ce serait les deux plus grands freins. Il y aurait certainement des enjeux d'aménagement de sites qui ne pourraient peut-être pas avec les installations, les murs actuels acceptés. Donc, je dirais que c'est plus un enjeu de capitaux de disponibilité de capitaux et l'exécution des travaux.
Un lien avec ce que vous avez soulevé.
Regarding what you said during your presentation, I think you would need different programs to support businesses in their modernization efforts. Do you have any ideas? Do you have any suggestions for the committee?
Le point que je voulais faire ici...
Excusez, monsieur Davies, excusez. On a un petit peu de difficulté avec la traduction. Est-ce que vous pouvez parler un petit peu plus lentement et monsieur Lehoux aussi un petit peu plus lentement parce qu'apparemment le...
Apparently there's a problem with interpretation. If you could please speak a little slower. Mr. Davis, you can answer the question. So regarding programs to support automation, at Olimel, the interpreter cannot interpret with the sound quality. The interpretation will resume once sound quality is improved.
Aller chercher l'activité commerciale là, qui est en
alors, M. Davies, regrettablement, on a de la difficulté. Je vais laisser le... Est-ce que le greffier peut regarder à ce que vous vérifiez s'il y a un problème de son?
Oui, on va regarder avec nos techniciens, voir si on peut améliorer le son de M. Davies. Donc, entre-temps, je ne sais pas si c'est possible de poser des questions à l'autre témoin.
Est-ce que c'est mieux comme ça?
Non, ce n'est pas mieux apparemment.
C'est pas mieux.
Alors monsieur Lehoux,
oui.
Est-ce que vous avez des questions à l'autre en attendant ou est-ce que...
Do you have any questions for any of the other witnesses, Monsieur Lehoux? I had other questions for Mr. Davies, but I can probably ask Mr. Anthony a question instead. So I have a quick question for you, Mr. Eikelenboom. There's an important constraint that I gleaned from your opening statement that there will be important difficulties in order to transport cattle in the new year. Did I understand that correctly, Mr. Eikelenboom?
There's a soft, I guess, implementation right now with how we're shipping these animals. And then coming February 2022, we will no longer be able to ship those calves to Quebec. And I can maybe elaborate a little bit more. The trucking, it comes with the trucking regulations, and we're about 14, 15, 16 hours maybe with a coffee break for the truckers to get to Quebec, and that's too long, so we won't be able to ship those calves to Quebec and put them in the market there. Therefore, that's why we need to do what we're doing here right now and create more markets here in Nova Scotia and so forth.
Quelles seraient les solutions?
So what solutions do you have in mind? Do you have anything to suggest? How could we solve this issue?
I think we're doing a good job here in Nova Scotia right now in solving the issue. There is promoting these beef calves because they are more they're better finished in the feedlots. The one problem that we have here in the east, or especially Nova Scotia, is we do not have any federal plants here, so we can't market our product with just having provincial plants here. We're very limited to where we can sell our product, and if we had that federal plant, we could go Canada-wide and beyond.
Thank you, Mr. Eichenblum. Alors, on pourrait peut-être revenir plus tard, mais malheureusement, avec le centre de M. Davis, c'est impossible de continuer. Mr. Blois for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Blois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, my questions, I'll start with Mr. Eichenblum. Anthony, it's great to see you. You're just down the road from me here in Nova Scotia. And you brought a different perspective to this committee as someone that actually transports animals. A lot of our focus, of course, is on processors. I just want to go back, obviously, to the transport regulations. You and I have had conversations outside this committee about the good intention of what those legislation means. Although the current transportation of bob calves is to Quebec, these regulations actually present an opportunity for us to do more processing in the Maritimes if we can move forward on that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, very fair, very fair.
And so where right now, if a dairy farmer is crossbreeding,
Pardon, Cody, Monsieur le Président, il n'y a plus aucune traduction qui fonctionne.
Alors,
No interpretation right now. Can we verify why this is happening? Could we please Could you please try again? Let's see if it works. Il me reste
for my timing, is translation going for Mr. Perron? We're okay? Okay, well, we'll continue. So, Anthony,
Ça va.
Good. C'est très bien? Okay. So, Mr. Anthony, we were talking about the crossbreeds for the bob calves. Where would those actually end up right now? So if a dairy farmer is crossbreeding, are they ending up in PEI? Are they going to Atlantic beef? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Okay, right now, I guess our market is we sell a few of the calves in our home province here in Nova Scotia. I'd say 95% of those calves do go to Prince Edward Island. They're fed over there. I think Atlantic Beef has a contract going right now with a few of the feedlots over there. Again, Atlantic Beef is a federal plant, so they have the ability to, to make connections with these farmers there, and yeah, that's what happens with those beef calves right now. And it'd be nice to move those calves here to Nova Scotia, and we'll give our farmers here in Nova Scotia, a more fair playing field, and so on, I guess.
I want to talk, you mentioned that the provincial processing, because of course in Nova Scotia, we do have some level of processing capability. They are only provincially licensed. The only federal inspection plant is in Prince Edward Island. Why is it then, if the processing facilities in Nova Scotia are at near 100% capacity, that there hasn't been a private sector solution to be able to move this forward? Is it just that the economies of scale aren't there? Is this not a sexy investment that people want to put their money into? If we're at 100%, why hasn't there been some entrepreneur move this forward and create a new facility?
I think it goes back to let's go with profitability. You know what I mean? Like you say, this where Nova Scotia sits logistically, it's not the best place. It's, as you called it, a sexy market. And if we had some federal money, or we had that federal plant, that probably would create a better picture for the private sector to come on board, and maybe if we had the government's help, and then that will show the private sector that there is a viable business, and I think it would take off tremendously there. We just need some processing capacity here in Nova Scotia. We need it.
So you mentioned in your speech about the provinces taking the lead. I know in speaking to Minister Thompson in Prince Edward Island, they recognize that this is an issue they're working on to incentivize their dairy farmers, particularly on the dairy issue around bob calves. but writ large, you see this as starting at the provincial level, and maybe the federal government support is maybe through one of the regional development agencies or through the Canadian Agriculture Partnership, where there already is existing funding channels to help support that. Is it fair to say that the provinces have to take the lead, and then the federal government perhaps can try to supplement any efforts in that regard?
Oh, for sure, 100% there. Like I have some ideas here that I would like Nova Scotia to do to help the farmer with the cost of the actual semen, because if we're promoting breed beef, to the bottom 2/3 and breed the sex semen to the top third, there when you get into the sex semen and stuff, it's more money. So maybe the provincial government can help out there and go from there.
And just so we get this on the record in terms of...
Cody, je suis vraiment désolé.
I'm sorry, but we lost interpretation again.
Your English is good, Yves, though.
I know. tu sais que c'est important quand même.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I'm at about 4.5 minutes. Can I just for your timing, just so we stay on the same page, I'd like to finish if I have 90 seconds once we get translation figured out.
You got a minute 24, Cody, left on.
Okay, minute 24. Okay, great.
Yeah. So how does it look, Mr. Clerk? Is there issues that we can resolve here for the sound?
Oui, je crois que c'est résolu, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, I think so. I can hear French interpretation very well.
Try again, Cody, and see how it works.
I'm gonna speak, and I'm hoping that Mr. Perron can hear me in French. Okay,
yeah,
excellent.
So we got thumbs up, so go.
Okay, so Anthony, I have about, like you said, about a minute 40 left. My final question just around the logistics. So you're in Shubenacadie, which is central in Nova Scotia. You work with many dairy farmers and beef farmers. What does the transportation look like in the Maritimes, given the fact that you have to travel these long distances? Because we've seen a deindustrialization of some of these facilities. So when you go pick up a calf, or what does that look like? Can you explain that to the members of this committee?
All right, so I guess when we go on the road at 2:30, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's when we start our day here in the east. We pick our calves up. They come back to the assembly yard here at Scotian, at my facility here. We have the tractor trailers here in the yard. Once the calves are fed, the calves are loaded onto the trucks, and then they head west to wherever they're going. And so we pick calves up in Prince Edward Island, we pick calves up in New Brunswick, and then they're head to Quebec there to St. Hyacinthe.
Okay. Just très rapidement pour Monsieur.
And very quickly for Mr. Davies. You've explained that Olimel wants a plant in New Brunswick. Is it only for pork?
Yeah, Mr. Boyce, and perhaps Mr. Davies will be able to answer it later. Monsieur Perron, allez-y pour 6.
Mr. Perron for 6 minutes. Well, yes, I'll let Mr. Davies answer the question. Inaudible for the interpreter. Mr. Davies, you talked about the problem of foreign workers, and you said that's a major issue, and that you said that you're asking 20%. We know that it's been 30% in the past. Is 20% sufficient? Would that be sufficient for a while? Or should it be even more, increased more? So, the interpreter notes that sound quality does not allow for interpretation currently.
Au niveau de l'accueil et de l'hébergement et tout qui vient avec, mais certainement, lever la base, ça va donner plus d'options autant à l'entreprise qu'au grand secteur manufacturier.
Okay. Alors, malheureusement.
Unfortunately, Mr. Davies, again, there's a problem with the sound quality, if I understand well. Maybe if you move your microphone, maybe it's a little too high. And maybe if you speak slower. Let's give this a try. So my question is, your official ask is to go up to 20%. Inaudible for the interpreter. Now, in terms of modernization, or maybe before on labor, I guess you've tried everything. How are the working conditions? Would you be able to increase salaries or benefits? The interpreter notes that sound quality still does not allow for interpretation currently.
Compensation, évidemment, à l'intérieur de notre industrie, et Olimel se tient au-delà de la moyenne. Puis, au niveau des...
Alors, Monsieur Davies, je regrette,
Mr. Davies, I'm sorry. My colleagues are telling me that interpretation is not working, and we need interpretation.
Je peux toujours répondre en anglais, il n'y a aucun problème.
Ça, c'est... On regrette d'être...
Unfortunately. Mr. Baron, you still have the floor. Could we maybe send questions and Mr. Davies could answer in writing? Would the committee allow that? Yes, that is possible for the witness to send us the replies in writing. I don't think there's a problem. I don't think there would be any objections. I mean, the witness can choose the language that they want to speak in, but we need to be able to offer interpretation. And then I'll go to the next witness. You talked about the new regulations concerning transportation. What the UPA in Quebec? Well, there are some studies that are being done. Do you think it's possible that there would be somewhere where you could deliver in Quebec?
There we go. We can get to Quebec here in from the Maritimes here, but we can't get to where I guess we can't get to where we have to go, like the assembly yard for those I guess for those bob calves. So in order for those calves to get to the right farm, to be comfortable, to be handled the correct way and everything, that's where they have to go. We could get inside the border, but then we run across you know, not having the proper establishment to, you know, to make sure that these calves are handled the correct way. You know, proper bedding. You know, do they have milk replacer on hand and all that stuff. I guess that's why we have to get to Saint-Hyacinthe.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you. So there's a real need of transformation in Nova Scotia. You said it in Nova Scotia? You have a plant, but it only has a provincial license. If we change the interprovincial rules, would that help you?
How do you mean by changing the interprovincial rules?
Permettre une circulation.
If it was easier, if transportation was easier, so if the meat from Nova Scotia met the requirements in Nova Scotia, if it was accepted in other provinces, there are some witnesses that talked about how the rules could be changed so that it'd be easier to go in between provinces.
Yeah, no, that would be yeah, that would be I guess a great option, maybe a stepping stone or another avenue that should be explored. Yeah.
Okay. Et
and if there was a federally licensed plant, that would be helpful, but you think that you'll need support from the federal government, right?
Yes, yeah, we will need support from the federal government, and that will just expand where we can go.
Thank you, Mr. Eichelboom, and now Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr.
McGregor. Mr. Chair, if we have questions for Mr. Davies, I mean, are we verbally communicating them now, or do we submit them to him in writing? I mean, I'm just not sure. Like, are all my questions going to be to Mr. Eichelboom at this time?
Well, so as you know, the sound doesn't work. So if the committee so wishes, we can certainly ask those questions and ask Mr. Davies to submit them in writing and be part of our committee, if everybody's okay with that. Any issues with that? So, I mean, if you want to just pose the question, one or two, and whatever you want to pose to him, and then Mr. Davies, if you want to take note and respond in writing, and if that works for everyone, unfortunately, we need to have translation. So if that's okay with everyone, acceptable, we'll go with that.
De point d'ordre, monsieur.
Point of order. Because I also had many questions for Mr. Davies. Should I send them in writing or should I say them orally? Yes, you can send them by writing. So if you have his contact info, you could send them in writing.
Écrit, ça va me faire plaisir de faire le tour de l'ensemble de vos questions sans aucun problème.
Okay, Mr. McGregor, yours for 6 minutes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Davies, maybe I'll follow up in a little bit more detail, but just so you're prepared, what some of the questions I was going to ask you was just concerning the fact that the federal and provincial governments in their recent meeting in November of 2020 had formed a working group to address the imbalance that you referred to between the retail sector and the processing sector. So I guess I wanted to dive a little bit more deeply into Alimel's reaction to that, whether you feel that the action so far is moving at the correct pace, whether you think it's going to be adequate. Just really if you can illustrate a little bit more that particular issue, because it's certainly one that has come up from previous witnesses. So it'd be great to have a more fulsome answer from you in that respect. Mr. Eichelboom, I think there are a lot of regions in Canada that are under similar circumstances as where you're from, and certainly the way COVID-19 has impacted our processing sector, particularly in meat processing, I think has really led many regions to sort of rethink our dependency on the old status quo supply network. So, maybe you can just fill us in a little bit more detail on the efforts thus far to try and secure that federal funding for a federally regulated plant, because I think other regions in Canada would love to learn, from your efforts, so they could maybe take a shortcut and not have to start from square one. So if you can fill us in a little bit more on the efforts thus far.
All right. Well, I guess I'm not sure how to answer your question there, because I like to buy and sell cows there. This is kind of, I was asked to come on this here and to give my input and stuff like that. But what I'm going to come like as I am a drover, but I'm going to come to you as a producer's perspective here in Nova Scotia. I find that we're in Nova Scotia here, we're behind the eight ball. Our input costs, our trucking, the price that we receive for stuff here in the Maritimes always seems to be less than when you get into Central Canada. And you were saying that there's, and I know there's other parts of Canada here that are probably in our predicament here too. But I find where Nova Scotia lays, we don't have that big of population here in Nova Scotia. So I think the reason why us farmers here in Nova Scotia would like something more secure is, I guess I just lost my train of thought there. Is so that we can come back to get back to the the level playing field there, whatever. So it can become an economical business. You know what I mean? And I guess for for those reasons, our input cost, our trucking costs, we have to receive less money when we sell our product because it has to go up the road, it has to do this and has to do that. That's why I'm supporting having a federal plant here in Nova Scotia. And I'll be honest, there's more work to be done, but hopefully this is the beginning stages. Maybe we can, get a few more industry players here, some more government talks and get something so the ball starts rolling forward.
So you're essentially like held captive to forces beyond your control.
Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned like the current provincially regulated plants are operating at near capacity, so it's not really a solution of finding a way to grant them a federal license because they're already dealing with domestic capacity issues. You actually need that separate federally licensed facility so that you can take some of that excess.
Yes, like I'd say that the average plant here in Nova Scotia has the capability of processing. We're going to talk beef here because I know that best. At the most, 15 head per day, and so like I know myself with Scotian Cattle Company, we're starting to buy 150 to 200 head per week. With the new transportation rules coming in and everything, we have to start looking at the classes of cows. Is the cow older? Well, then the new rules state that she should be processed more local to home or in your own province or whatever. And right now, we're having to put those cows on hold till I get a hole in one of the provincial abattoirs. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. That we cannot get these animals processed when they should be processed.
And just my
especially the compromised animals here.
And my final quick question is the interest, I know like the capital expenditures are huge and that's where the federal government can play a role. Yep. Once that facility, gets off the ground with that capital investment, is there the interest in sort of operating it in a cooperative model where everyone would have a sort of a buy-in, a stake in the operation of the plant?
So we're very tight on time, so I'm going to have to cut it off here. You might have a chance to answer it later with somebody else. So Mr. Epp, for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you to the witnesses for appearing. I'm going to begin with Mr. Davies, posed a comment and a question. We'll try it, then I'll move on. In preparing for this, I did speak with a pork producer in my riding down the most southern part of Canada here, who is one of your ships to you in Quebec. He just expressed gratitude for the special arrangements you've made through this difficult time for capacity and making arrangements to have that slaughtered in the state. So I'll pass that along. We're somewhat aware of the challenges with labor that you've talked about. The question I have is, if we can get this by translation, what percentage of your business is export focused and what percentage is domestic?
I'll try and answer.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think we've agreed that we'll have to submit the answer in writing.
Okay. Okay.
So you can ask the question, and we'll certainly get.
Okay. And so the question I would ask our response of, when you're dealing, and I assume that the bulk of your business, and I could be wrong here, is export. So when you're dealing into that retail trade and the export business, compare that to the environment that you're selling into Canada. We've heard lots of calls for the code of conduct or something along those lines. So I guess I'm looking for a comparison to the markets that you're selling into with a balance of power across that retail trade. So that's what I'm looking for. I'll move to Mr. Enkelboom. I didn't say that properly, so I'll apologize for that up front. Speaking with a local cattle drover, again from Southern Ontario, he shared with me a graph that was presented by Dr. Sarah Lloyd at the Big Ag Conference January 16th in the U.S. U.S. pricing, but it's a 10-year profile that shows prices per hundredweight paid to the producer and cents per pound of the retail trade up until, and it begins January of 2010, And up until about midsummer of 2014, they tracked. Obviously there's the differential, the processing differential, but there's a marked divergence starting from about midsummer of 2014 to the present time, and the chart goes to November of 2020. Can you comment on that? You've talked about some of the regional challenges you have. This is an American pricing, but I'm told by my Ontario drover here that he's experiencing the similar divergence. Can you comment on that and what might be some of the drivers of that?
I don't really, understand your understand your question.
If the trend was for rising cattle prices at the retail level, it was a rising trend to the producer. That trend held until about the mid of August of 2014. I wish I could just flip my other screen and have you see it.
Yeah.
Then there's a marked difference from about summer of 2014 to present, where that spread is widening markedly between what the producer receives. So
right. I don't know if I really can answer that question there. I'm not familiar with that stuff that's happening in the States, but I can speak to maybe some of the markets here in Nova Scotia. I find when we can pay more for our product, I don't find the spread in the stores goes up or goes down. I find that follows kind of the live animal, or maybe the live animal price follows the meat price in the store. But I wouldn't say that there's any big gouging going on amongst the retailers to the producers or that sense there. I think it's relatively a fair price here in Nova Scotia.
Okay, thank you. The allegation to me it was because of a lack of processing capacity and that line space is at a premium, that those margins are widening. And so I didn't know if that same dynamic was presenting itself in Atlantic Canada.
Okay.
Canada's status. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. As I understand, Canada's status regarding BSE is changing. We're going to a controlled risk country. Would you suspect there might be advantages for some of the BSE regulations in Canada to be relaxed, or is that not worth the risk moving forward?
I guess personally, I like the rules that that are in effect right now in Canada. I find it divides the country nice. So I think we're divided in maybe 3 to 4 areas. So if one part of the country does show a case of the mad cow or whatever, then that part of the country is going to be closed off, and the rest of the country can operate. Whereas back in whatever year it was, there was a long time ago, I was just a little guy then. The whole country had to shut down. So I would say I would like it the way it is versus maybe changing the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Eichenblum. Now, Madame Lynn Bessette, je pense que vous allez partager votre temps avec
Lynn Bessette and Mr. Blewis, I think you're sharing your time today. Thank you very much, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. I've got questions for Mr. Davies. That way we can record these. So with your 30 years in Olymel, the performance business model needs labour, in particular foreign workers, as you've already mentioned. And we know that this is becoming an important issue for food processing plants. Could you explain to what extent hiring temporary foreign workers is actually a necessity and an advantage for you in terms of your activities? Then a second question, I'd like to know what other measures are necessary, you think, to support the hiring of labour in food processing plants, in particular in rural, or rather in regions? And then another question. I'm trying to understand what is actually restricting growth in the processing sector. Those were my questions for Mr. Davies. And now I can give my time to Cody.
2 minutes left, and I just want to finish on a couple different questions. First would be around, we've talked a lot about federal versus provincially licensed. I know you're not a producer yourself, but you deal with producers, whether it's in beef, and of course, the agriculture community is quite small in the maritime provinces. What is the advantage to having a federally inspected slaughterhouse? Because certainly what I've heard on the ground is having that in place, allowing the animals to be processed through the federal mechanism, would allow more producers to be able to sell into the larger retail stores like Sobeys, Loblaws, Walmart. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, you're very correct in saying that, Cody. Again, it goes back to maybe what I said there a little while ago, that I think having a federal plant here in Nova Scotia will get our producers on level playing ground. It's so hard to get our stuff merchandised here from the provincial plants. Like I tell all my farmers, every time I buy an animal, it always has to go up the road. And I think a good goal for the farmers here, or the agriculture community here in Nova Scotia, is to be able to keep it at home, and then I think it would better help everybody in the agriculture industry here in the Maritimes.
So, Anthony, when you say up the road, you don't just mean from Shubenacadie to Truro. You mean up the road from Nova Scotia to Saint-Hyacinthe, Quebec, or some other region outside of Atlantic Canada. And of course, you've focused. I had the chance to bring you on here to bring this perspective. We've talked a lot about Nova Scotia, but surely when we talk about economies of scale, it's not just about provincial boundaries. It's about looking at the maritime region as a whole, perhaps even Atlantic Canada if we include Newfoundland, and looking at ways to create those economies of scale. Mr. McGregor talked to you about cooperatives and different models to make that work. Is it fair to say that it's not just about Nova Scotia, it's about creating a regional approach to tackle some of these issues and opportunities in the days ahead?
Oh, for sure. It would work great. Like I'll just go back to I guess tell you a little bit more about Scotian here. When I set up the road there, we have to sell our animals down to Pennsylvania. We have to sell our animals into Guelph. We have to put our calves into St. Hyacinthe. There's even some cows go to a few sales in Ontario and other auctions in Quebec. So where, with what you're saying, the cooperatives and everything, it will definitely help the agriculture industry here in Nova Scotia. It'd be nice to be able to just pick your animals up and go down the road 5 minutes, and instead of pick your animals up, bring them to my place, and then they have to go up the road for 20 hours or whatever the time frame may be. So.
Okay. Mr. Chair, that's all the questions I have, and I see it's about 4:30, so I'd like to thank the witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Blois, and yeah, thanks for that extra time. So I would just suggest anyone that was on this panel that...
Je m'excuse, Monsieur le Président, je pourrais faire...
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I would like to go back to interpretation and the technical aspects. We asked for the witness from Olimel to be present today. I know that we will have the content, but for next time, when there's a technical issue, I mean, I understand that the headset was not received by the witness, but if we can solve technical issues before the beginning of the committee meeting, if we're unable to solve the issue, could we possibly push back this witness's appearance so that they be able to appear and speak in their own language? It's not only an issue for the Bloc, but also there are other people sitting on this committee that do not speak English as well as required to understand an English testimony. I understand, unfortunately, today there was no other way to improve sound quality for Mr. Davies. If the committee wishes to re-invite the witness during another panel, that is their prerogative. They can decide to do so. Well, actually, I would like to plan for the future, maybe to plan for a plan B or an alternative solution. So for today, if you would like to submit a list of questions for the witness, Mr. Davies, we will be able to obtain answers for those questions. and we will be able to come back to this, Monsieur Perron, at a later date.
Witnesses today, Mr. Davies, unfortunately, everybody wanted to hear what you had to say, but it didn't work out. And thanks for being here. Maybe we'll have a chance to bring you in the next panel. And also, Mr. Anthony Eichenboom, again, thanks for being here. And we shall pause, suspend, and be back with the next panel. So don't go too far. We'll be back as soon as possible. Thank you. To make a few comments for the benefit of the new witnesses. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair, and interpretation in this video conference will work very much like a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. So we'll start our second panel. With that. Okay, so alors à titre.
And so on a personal note, Ian Blankhorn appearing as an individual. And from Food and Beverage Canada, Kathleen Sullivan, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, Ms. Sullivan. Let us now begin. You have 7.5 minutes, Mr. Blankhorn. So go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to appear before this committee. Briefly, my background and context for my comments today are the result of 34 plus years working in the agricultural industry. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in agricultural economics. I spent the first 13 years of my career as an agricultural banker for various lending institutions in 5 provinces across Canada. The next 5 years as an agricultural finance consultant, working closely with farmers. And the last 16 plus years have been spent as a partner in a large broiler chicken, hatching egg mink farm, as well as business executive managing various poultry companies in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. Based on my experiences over the years, I have the following observations, opinions, and recommendations to present to this committee today. The Canadian supply management system has and continues to be a very positive marketing tool for the agricultural commodities fortunate enough to have the system in place. The ability to control imports and establish domestic production levels, along with the ability to set the producer price at a level that covers all costs and a return to investment, is the envy of many other farmers in Canada and around the world. Poultry meat processing sector in Canada is generally supportive of supply management. However, there is a need for modernization of the system, as the strategy of supply management is only at the primary producer level. Once the primary production is sold to a processor, there is no supply management at that point and beyond. It is solely free market, driven by supply and demand. This fact has been creating increasing pressure on the stability of supply management over the years, and is reaching a tipping point at this juncture. The current COVID-19 pandemic has brought the problem to a new level of importance. Given that producers ultimately control the amount of chicken grown in Canada per year, and processors are ultimately obligated to purchase this volume at a regulated price that guarantees the producer a profitable return, regardless of what the consuming marketplace may demand or be willing to pay, is a serious problem that is getting worse by the day in these COVID times. As market demand has dropped over the past year, with restaurants, etc., being closed due to COVID-19, and the supply has continued to either rise or be maintained by producers, the supply of chicken now well exceeds demand. The market price received by processors and further processors is at or below cost of production. This market distortion and lack of willingness by producers to react and understand that they are one segment of a much bigger industry is very problematic and troubling. It is extremely difficult for processors to consider existing reinvestment strategies, let alone consider expanding capacity for export under the current circumstances. In my opinion, and that of many in the processing sector, the powers of Farm Products Marketing Council of Canada need to enhance so that they can drive change and modernization of the supply management system. One quick change that could be made in the case of the chicken sector would be to require the live price paid to the producers to include a wholesale price component in the pricing formula. Thus, if the producers realize the negative consequences of oversupply through a reduction in their live price as a result of the low wholesale price, I expect they would be more responsive to establishing the appropriate domestic supply levels. Another significant problem for producers in certain parts of the country is the fact that producers are free to ship their product to whichever processor they want, and there is no system in place to backfill the losing processor with equivalent volume. In some cases, live birds are being transported for 10 to 12 hours to competing processor instead of being processed at a processor that is minutes away from the farm. This is both a potential animal welfare issue and a major supply risk to the affected processor. How does a processor in this situation view future investment? Recently, the issue of food security was seriously challenged in Nova Scotia, in the Nova Scotia chicken sector. The only federally inspected poultry processor was shut down for 2 weeks by the provincial health department due to COVID-19. This put serious pressure on the supply of fresh local chicken. The problem was amplified by the fact that processors in the neighboring province had limited ability to assist the Nova Scotia plant as their catching and transport systems were not compatible between plants. Fortunately, solutions were found and no birds were euthanized. However, it has highlighted the need for more uniformity between regional plants so that they can help each other in times of need to protect food security and animal welfare. This uniformity will have significant costs associated with it and require cooperation amongst competing processors. Access to a reliable and reasonably priced is another limitation of many processors, as well as transportation regulations that are becoming increasingly restrictive on the movement of livestock to regional processors. Compensation for trade deals and assurance that TRQ will remain predominantly in the hands of processors are other factors that will affect processors' willingness and ability to reinvest in their industry or expand for export potential. Until the supply management system is modernized and many other concerns I have raised are addressed by industry and government, I find it difficult to see major poultry processor investment for export markets. However, if the investment is to be made, is to be considered, then export markets need to be expanded. The federal government needs to endeavor to increase market access for Canadian agricultural products. Expanded access to the Chinese market would be a good place to start. You will note from my comments in point 1 that I never talked about the need for direct financial investment in industry by government. In my opinion, financial investment with public funds is not the key to increasing processing capacity in Canada. The key is providing the appropriate business-friendly landscape for private investment to occur. There is more than enough private money in the world looking for low to medium risk profitable businesses to invest in. However, that same money will also run from high risk unprofitable investments just as quickly. In my opinion, government needs to focus on creating the appropriate environment for business to operate at low risk with stability and predictability. With this environment, entrepreneurs will surface, invest, and achieve the goals that the Barton Report aspires to. Examples of changes in the landscape that I believe need to be addressed include easier and more reliable access to year-round foreign labor, more reasonable union laws that are conducive to business while not jeopardizing employee rights, changes to unemployment insurance guidelines so that employees are encouraged to find full-time year-round employment and to work when work is available instead of claiming on an open claim. health and safety regulations that are more rational and put some onus on the employee to work safely, more reasonable environmental regulations that still protect the environment while allowing business to operate efficiently and profitably, and a simplified income tax act with more access to investment tax credits to reward investment after it is made and is successful. With respect to the farming community, I believe financial acumen still needs to be improved with many farmers. I do believe it has improved over the years. However, there is, in my opinion, more work to be done. I believe both federal and provincial governments can assist with this initiative. New farmers should be required to prove their understanding of financial statements and business planning principles before having access to credit. Just because a new farmer is the son or daughter of an existing farmer and has lived and worked on the family farm does not mean they have the financial skills to manage a for-profit business. I appreciate that farming for many is a lifestyle choice. However, it is also a for-profit business that needs to be operated and managed as such. The financial education should go beyond simply understanding financial statements and business planning. It should include topics such as production economics and supply-demand principles.
Thank you, Mr. Blencarn. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we'll have a chance to question later on. And now, Mrs. Kathleen Sullivan for 7.5 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to appear today. Food and Beverage Canada is a national association whose members include provincial food and beverage associations, as well as leading Canadian food and beverage processing companies. Food and beverage manufacturers are at the center of Canada's food supply. There are few Canadian agriculture products that make it to Canada's grocery store shelves without first being transformed by one of our almost 8,000 companies. Food and beverage is the largest manufacturing employer in the country. We employ almost 300,000 people, generate $120 billion in annual sales, and supply much of the food that Canadians eat. A strong and vibrant processing sector is critical to ensure Canada's food sovereignty, to support our primary agriculture sector, and to continue contributing to the country's economic recovery and well-being. Entering 2020, our sector was focused on the goals set by the Federal Agri-Food Economic Strategy Table, increasing domestic food sales and exports by 30% by 2025. Canada has tremendous potential when it comes to agriculture and food. This is a sentiment we hear often and one we often repeat, but we need much more than words to support Canada's agriculture and food processing sectors. We need to put action behind those words. Today, I will focus on 3 priorities for ensuring recovery and growth for food and beverage processing: labor, worker health, and retail concentration. First off, labor. Entering 2020, our industry was already flagging labor as a crisis. Today, we estimate the sector is short 30,000 workers, 10% of our workforce. By 2025, we expect that number to more than double. Why? Increased retirements, a shortage of skilled workers, the seasonal nature of certain subsectors, the regionality of some of our businesses. COVID-19 has also led to additional absenteeism and challenges finding replacement workers. This cannot continue. Without healthy, skilled workers, we cannot produce the food Canadians need, and we cannot add value to the agriculture products that Canada wants to export. Over the last 2 years, we have repeatedly raised the alarm regarding the industry's labor issues, largely and very sadly to no avail. We understand labor is complex, but there are some simple things we can do to start. First off, we need a simple assessment of current and future labor requirements for this industry, and I will say for primary agriculture as well, matched up against expected domestic labor supply. If there is a shortage, which industry says there is, then we need to address that. Last year, we at FBC held a labor strategy session where we did include government and identified 3 priority areas: addressing the shortage of skilled trades, ensuring we have access to qualified foreign workers, and supporting automation. We continue to invite the federal government to work with industry on these. Secondly, I'd like to talk about worker health. With the outbreak of COVID-19, food and beverage processors took on the incredible challenge of managing worker health while meeting the imperative as an essential service of maintaining Canada's food supply. Food plants are first and foremost manufacturing sites. They are designed for efficiency, for food safety, for occupational health and safety. They were never originally designed to manage a public health crisis. So with COVID-19, manufacturers literally overnight had to implement new policies and protocols to protect workers from the virus. Things like enhanced PPE, health screening tools, structural modification, and enhanced cleaning. We estimate that the industry has invested close to $1 billion so far to protect workers. But despite these measures, food plants are congregate settings. As well, no matter what we do inside our plants, we cannot protect our workers outside our walls. Frontline food workers have made sacrifices so our food system can operate. We need to protect them by ensuring they have access, if they want it, to vaccines. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommended that essential workers, including from our sector, be prioritized for vaccine access. But these are only recommendations, and I will point out that even last week, the province of British Columbia announced its vaccine rollout plan, and that plan fails to prioritize food and other essential workers other than healthcare workers over the general population. So we encourage the federal government to utilize whatever levers it has to ensure provinces follow the recommendations of the NACI. Finally, I want to talk about retail concentration, a topic you've heard a lot about. And as you know, the Canadian retail food sector is highly concentrated, with just 5 companies controlling 80% of the market. This leaves food and beverage manufacturers with limited negotiating power. Please remember, there are almost 8,000 food processors in Canada. 7,000 of them, 90% of them, are small and mid-sized businesses, companies with fewer than 100 employees. Food retailers regularly impose arbitrary transaction costs, fees, and penalties on their suppliers, often without notice or retroactively. In addition, they regularly extend payment terms for months, often delaying payments and impacting the liquidity of their suppliers. This is absolutely no longer tolerable. We are very pleased that at the November meeting, the federal, provincial, and territorial agriculture ministers committed to strike a working group to look at the issue. We continue to encourage them to prioritize this and to play a leadership role in ensuring a grocery code of conduct is in place by the end of this year. As a final note, I just want to touch on those cost impacts of COVID-19. Unlike many businesses, food and beverage processors were able to operate through the pandemic, which is, of course, what every business wanted to do. The cost of this, however, has been quite significant, as I said, close to $1 billion. We have asked the Department of Finance to consider a refundable tax credit for COVID-19 costs incurred by our sector and other essential services sectors, businesses that continue to operate through the pandemic and that have seen significant cost increases related to ongoing critical operations and to ensuring worker safety. I would like to thank you again, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sullivan. And now we'll go to our question round, and we'll start with Ms. Rood for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the presenters today for the great presentations. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I just want to underscore you're telling us that food processors employ some 300,000 Canadians and that there's a shortfall of 30,000 workers in the industry, because I think that was a really important figure that we heard here today. And when you spoke of labor shortages, you mentioned that the skilled trades in particular. So could you speak more to where the shortages are in the skilled trades and like where they lie in your industry?
Sure. So if you think about skilled trades, so professions such as electricians, millwrights, there is a incredible shortage of skilled trades, not just for our sector, but for manufacturing across the country. So we are literally unable to fill all the positions we have. And you can imagine that these positions are incredibly important in terms of actually keeping a plant operating, keeping the equipment running. We've got a shortfall there. We also, as you may know, when it comes to skilled trades, these are largely mandatory skilled trades. So you've got an apprenticeship period and a training period. It can take a long time to train somebody for the skilled trades. And when we have an immediate shortfall, waiting 5 to 6 years for a new cohort of skilled trades to come through is really not an untenable solution to the problem.
Great. And again, on the labor shortages, you also mentioned the need for access to qualified foreign workers. So could you tell us about some of the barriers to access and your thoughts on overcoming the barriers for this?
Sure. So when we use foreign workers in the food processing sector, and primary agriculture would be very much the same, sometimes we use temporary foreign workers because the jobs are seasonal. So if you think about canning tomatoes, for example, that's a seasonal job. In other times, we're bringing in foreign workers because there's simply a structural shortage of workers here in Canada. So with the TFW system, as my colleague from Molly Mel pointed out, it is a very cumbersome system. There are limits on the percentage of TFWs you can have in a company. The application for TFWs is very long, even though you're often bringing in TFWs, the same person year over year. The application time is, you're having to book 6 months out for the workers that you need. So there's absolutely a need to go in, look at the TFW system, modernize it, and simplify it. On the other side, where we have permanent jobs and we're looking for economic immigrants to come to Canada to take on permanent, full-time, respectable jobs with us. And there are many people who want those jobs. The way our immigration system works, though, it too is quite complicated. It's a point system, and there's various different streams. And very, very few, if any, of those streams, as they award points, actually favor sort of what we may think of as the blue-collar workers or the technicians who are coming to work in food plants. So we're sort of we're dead before we start, if you will. We just really have very few opportunities to bring in the workers that we need because the system has been designed to not favor the workers that we require.
Great. And another thing that I heard you speak about was the challenges for food processing because of the pandemic. And how have the measures to address food plants as congregate settings, such as social distancing, affected food processing capacity and the reliability of Canadian food supply?
You know, I think we've been very lucky here in Canada. We obviously saw early on last March shortages in the grocery store shelves. I think we saw some more, certainly where I live, in the fall with the second wave of the pandemic. I think the Canadian companies have done an incredible job of keeping that food supply going, but I have to tell you, it has been a Herculean effort. So companies have, for example, as I said, food processing is a manufacturing business. And so you think of the equipment, the quintessential assembly line. If you have people who stand near each other on that assembly line, in order to accommodate social distancing, you can put fewer people there, which means you have to slow down production. So what we have seen companies do to overcome that is to actually add other shifts. So they've had to run, they're less productive on any given shift, and they've had to try to find other new workers to work different shifts. So add an overnight shift, for example. We also saw companies do things like streamline their product line. So if you were a chicken processor who perhaps previously had 40 different products that you offered, you may have streamlined that down to 20 so that you could increase the efficiency of what was going through. It has added at the end of the day for worker bonuses, for changes to the actual configuration of the plants, for additional PPE and cleaning. As I said, last year we estimated it was $800 million. I'm guessing we're getting close to about $1 billion just in the costs of trying to keep our workers safe while they're at work.
Thank you for that. That's a big cost. And you also mentioned the need for vaccines for workers in the plants. So could you tell us about the food processing plants and that should be prioritized?
Listen, again, a food plant, if you, I'm sure many of you have been to a food plant, but I'm sure a lot of the people watching this haven't. When you drive down the highway and you see a big sort of building that looks like a warehouse, there's a good chance that is some sort of manufacturing plant, including possibly a food plant. It's a closed building. Plants in Canada, there's almost 8,000 of them, and they range in size, but there's certainly plants that can have 1,000 people in the building for a particular shift.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thanks, Ms. Root. And now, Mr. Blois for 7.5 minutes. Go ahead,
Mr. Chair, my questions are going to be to Mr. Blanchon.
6 minutes, sorry.
Yeah, but I think we put him on mute, and I don't know if he knows how to get off mute. There you are,
I think
Mr.
I'm there now.
Yeah. You're there. Look, I really enjoyed your remarks here on this committee, and I want to start first and foremost. You talked about supply management. We all know the importance of that program. I know on the dairy side, there's a cooperation through the Natural Products Marketing Council with processors, producers, and really kind of setting the stage on the retail level as well. What can you explain a little bit about how producers working in concert with processors can lead to better outcomes and including more investment on the processing side?
Well, I think, as I said in my comments, there needs to be an understanding from producers that they're one cog in the wheel, and that they have to manage their supply to meet the demand, so that the whole industry stays viable, not just the producers. There is, as I said in my remarks, supply management is only at the producer level. Once the producer sells to the processor, then the processor has to buy that product at the price the producer demands for covering their costs, and then that processor takes the risk as to whether the marketplace will buy it at a profitable level or not. And in the current COVID times, as I said, I've seen cases where a product that should be selling at $3, $4 a kg is selling for 50 cents a kg because there's just way too much product around. I know some process.
So I guess basically in a nutshell, because I only have 6 minutes, is essentially greater cooperation in terms of cost of production studies between producers and being realistic about the costs that are being passed off to processors.
And making sure that the supply is the right supply. Right now, the way the system is in chicken, the more the producer produces, the more they make. And they have no consequence to the reality of whether the processor can sell it or not.
You made a remark today that you said you don't think there's plenty of private capital that is willing to invest in this sector if the landscape is right. And that is a remarkably rare quote from what we hear from individuals that join this committee. There's usually often some request from government. Why do you think it's important that it comes from the private sector? And is there a time and place that government should be involved, or is that very rare, if at all?
I think it's very rare, personally. I think, as I've said in my comments, that government needs to focus on creating the right landscape and then let business do business. There's lots of entrepreneurs, there's lots of money out there. If there's profit to be made, they will find it. But they need to know that they're welcome in the country. They need to know that the country wants them to be in business. And we can't keep putting up roadblocks. Every time we strengthen our environmental regulations or occupational health and safety regulations or unemployment regulations, we're promoting more and more socialist lifestyles and less entrepreneurial business. And it's getting to the point where it's extremely frustrating to do business in Canada as an entrepreneurial business.
I want to go to the point you made about supply management, and a lot of course, your comments were through the lens of the poultry industry in terms of transportation to other provinces, to other facilities. Can you speak a little bit? Of course, we've got Eden Valley in my neck of the woods in the Annapolis Valley. Can you speak a little bit about how that plays out and some of the impacts that it creates?
Can you just rephrase your question? I don't.
So you mentioned that there sometimes the chickens or the chickens are traveling a long distance to their facility, 10 or 12 hours, as opposed to going one that might be locally, because there's no requirement for those animals to be processed in their provincial boundary, so to speak. Can you lay out how that creates an impact for processors in terms of potential reinvestment?
Yeah, so you take Eden Valley Poultry. Now there's a plant that costs $50 million. It doesn't have any government money into it. The shareholders producers put in 10 million. A major processor in Canada put in 10, and the bank put in 30. And there's no government money. It's been a very, very successful plant. But in order to get enough volume, it had to go to PEI to get volume, because there was a third of the Nova Scotia producers that refused to ship there because they could get a few pennies more by shipping all the way up north to northern New Brunswick. So there's birds that drive right past the processing plant in the valley of Nova Scotia, go all the way to northern New Brunswick to be processed just for an extra few pennies. And the cost of production and the life price that producers are paid already covers their costs and a reasonable profit margin. But there's greedy producers that want an extra few pennies, and there's a processor that wants to pay a few extra pennies because they want the chicken to expand or make their plant more viable, and it really jeopardizes. It took us a long time to get that Eden Valley plant built because we had to get enough volume, and we had to struggle to get the volume.
I want to go to Ms. Sullivan just very quickly. Of course, the question was around vaccines, and obviously health is in the provincial domain. How are those conversations going with the provincial governments in terms of prioritizing vaccinations that are being received by the federal government at the provincial level?
Well, most provinces, all provinces right now are on phase 1 of their vaccine rollouts. So they're just starting to think about what phase 2 will look like. I'm very pleased to say that from Ontario East, all of the provinces have indicated that essential workers, including our workers, would be included in phase 2. Unfortunately,
sorry, Mrs. Sullivan, I keep cutting you off. But,
thank you.
Mr. Perron, thank you, Mr. Blois. Mr. Perron, allez-y pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Perron, it's you now for 6 minutes. Good afternoon, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. Mrs. Sullivan, perhaps you could finish off what you were saying first, if you wish. Go ahead, Mrs. Sullivan.
That Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta have not indicated what their phase 2 will look like, so we don't know. And as I said, unfortunately, BC has sort of not included or singled out essential workers as a specific category for vaccine prioritization. Once they're finished with, understandably, healthcare, residents of long-term care homes and medical people, it just goes to the general public.
Est-ce que vous avez eu des
Have you had contacts with the provincial government in Quebec?
Our understanding that, well, first of all, the Quebec government has indicated, and it's on their website, so it's visible, that essential workers and food processors included will be included in vaccine prioritization. So we're clearly very pleased about that. And Quebec is a very large province when it comes to food processing, and I have to say one that is generally very, very good about responding to the needs of the sector.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Now you've talked about the importance of local processing for food sovereignty. Turning now to labour. I put the question to another speaker earlier to increase the percentage of temporary foreign workers from 10 to 20%. Now, do you think that that's a sufficient request? Or should we go for 30% so that we don't need to readjust this again in the future in terms of the percentages?
To absolutely adjust it to 20%. And I think we do need to consider whether it should just be open-ended. There are other safeguards in the program that require, for example, that employers look to local markets first to make sure that they are, as a first effort, trying to identify domestic people here in Canada who are available for the jobs. There are also safeguards embedded in the program to ensure that temporary foreign workers are not paid less than you would a domestic or Canadian worker. So I do think there's sufficient safeguards built into the program to ensure that there isn't overuse and a neglect of the domestic labor markets. But the truth is, what we have found over many years is that there is not a sufficient domestic market to fill the jobs. I was quite disappointed last fall when I requested of the federal government if there'd been any analysis of what, in fact, the needs are of industry. So rather than talk about the TFW program specifically, what is industry's need for labor, and has the government actually matched that up against what structurally we have from a labor market? I mean, Canada's demographics, we all know, we're not producing children the way we would have generations before. We're not going to be able to domestically ensure that we have a future supply of labor in this country unless we do look to foreign workers. There's lots of other things we can do domestically as well to enhance the pool of labor that we might have here, but foreign workers are essential.
Okay, merci.
Thank you, Nan. In terms of automation, that could help to offset the labour shortage, but of course it takes a great deal of private investment. It's difficult, and we know there's underinvestment for the moment. So what do you need amongst processors? And how can we influence the government? What would be your recommendations on that front?
Industries and businesses in adopting automation and robotics. To a large extent, those programs are not applicable to our sector. So I think that the federal government would be helpful for them to sort of re-examine the programs they've got and understand what is specific about our industry. Remember, a lot of the businesses in food and beverage manufacturing are small to mid-size. And so when it comes to automation, you're looking at sort of adding capital, getting over that growth spurt that you need. Ian pointed out that Eden Valley Poultry is a $50 million poultry plant. You need $50 million to build even a small to mid-sized processing plant in this country. Any business is going to require some sort of support. So I would strongly encourage the federal government to take a look at their suite of programs offered through ISAD and understand whether they are really appropriate and accessible by companies in our sector.
And programs like the emergency account for food processing, we know that this fund is insufficient. A good number of businesses need this fund. So do you think that you would need additional funding?
$5 million. We estimate the cost of adjusting to COVID-19 to be close to $1 billion. So obviously the fund was not sufficient. Certainly recognize that many sectors, every individual in Canada has been affected by the pandemic, which is why rather than top up that fund, we are suggesting that the government look at a refundable tax credit for essential businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Mr. McGregor, for 6 minutes. Go
ahead. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Sullivan, a lot of the comments that you've given to us today certainly echo what we also heard from the food processors of Canada. And so it's great to see multiple witnesses confirming the same kinds of issues. When it comes to the arbitrary fees that are being levied by retailers, you know, that concentration that we've seen in the marketplace, you know, through Canada's marketplace, we see a few retailers that have just a huge amount of power. I know that you've indicated that you're pleased that with the steps that the federal government has been taking with the provinces, and that you hope to see that code of conduct in place by 2021. I'm just curious though, has your association and maybe the Food Processors of Canada, have you used the combined weight of your membership to try and force any action with the retailers? Can you inform the committee on your efforts on that front?
So in the fall, about 33 different associations and producer groups co-signed a policy document asking for a code of conduct. So there's quite a family or suite of associations, producer groups involved in this. In that collective, I would say that different groups have reached out to the retail sector in different ways, sometimes to individual companies, sometimes to their association, the Retail Council. And we certainly, we have not seen, there's 5 large retailers. We saw Sobeys in the fall make some comments that were quite, I think heartening for others in the food supply chain, saying that they agreed that some of the practices that were going on were, I think the word was repugnant, and that a code of conduct would be beneficial. We have not heard that level of support from other retailers. It is absolutely my hope that as the working group set up by the ministers proceeds, that the retailers will come to the table. I think any kind of product we produce, a code of conduct, for example, is always enhanced if all of the parties create it together. So I would certainly want the retailers at the table, and I do think that sentiment is shared by certainly the association, other associations that I've been working closely with.
Yes, absolutely. Because, I mean, if we're going to encourage those entrepreneurs that Mr. Blankarn was talking about, the new hopeful startups, we want them to have that equal playing field about where their products are going to be listed on store shelves and so on.
And I will say we are definitely working very closely with the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers. So all of the other grocers who aren't in the big five, if you will, are quite active. And in fact, I have a meeting with them tomorrow. So we're working quite closely with them.
Labor, of course, I've been on this committee for a few years now, and that is a perennial issue that seems to come quite frequently. And I know the struggles that the industry was having even before COVID hit. When you're talking about those labor shortages, are there some regions in Canada that are more acute than others? I'm just wondering, are some provinces through their nomination streams, their provincial nomination streams, sort of trying to identify that issue in your specific sector?
The labor shortage is something that we hear from every single province in the country. It may look different or manifest itself differently in different regions, but it is wholesale pretty much across the board. So, we absolutely need to. I think where I'm frustrated is that, like you've already acknowledged we've been talking about this for years. It's very difficult as industry to sort of read the economic strategy table report, to read the industry strategy council report that came out just before Christmas, and these sort of like very enthusiastic cheers for agriculture and food processing and all the potential that it has. And yet when industry comes forward and says, look, there's some really basic fundamentals we need to get right here, it seems like that all falls on a deaf ear. Not all the work we do is sexy or, is going to include buzzwords. I know that robotics, people like to talk about a lot now, but, robotics isn't going to address all of industry's production issues, processing capacity issues. Sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves and deal with the basics and figure out what's going wrong and fix the problem. And I think that's what we have unfortunately failed to do. And there is a real growing frustration on the part of industry. And to the extent we had problems going into COVID, this sector is going to be incredibly critical for economic recovery. First of all, you need this food supply chain for food sovereignty, but there's also massive potential to leverage what the agri-food sector is doing to actually grow economically, both domestically and also from a trade standpoint. As somebody else pointed out, Canadians will keep eating. If we don't feed them the food that we make, someone's going to bring their product in from overseas, and people will eat that.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody eats. That's one guarantee your industry has. I'm getting close to the end of my time, so I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Sullivan, for your comments and testimony.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor, Ms. Sullivan. And now, Mr. Steinley for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Steinley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'll ask both witnesses some questions. My first one, Mr. McGregor went down this path, but on the impacts of the grocery code of conduct would have on independent grocery stores, I'm wondering, coming from Saskatchewan, where we have a lot of co-ops, independent stores, I know the code of conduct is geared towards the 5 big grocery conglomerates. So what would be the impact on those smaller local stores?
So if you look at, I'll start if I will, if you look at codes of conduct in other countries, so the UK, for example, has had a grocery code of conduct for a number of years. That code of conduct is exclusively focused on the large retailers. We don't have to do that in Canada. We can create a solution that works for us. We do have very important independent retailers who are a critical part of the landscape when it comes to our food system. My view is that any code of conduct we develop needs to include the perspective of the independent grocers. I'm in fact involved in a conversation with the independent grocers now over drafting some principles that would meet the needs of food processing and also ensure the needs of the independent grocers are reflected as well. So I think at the end of the day, whatever code we have should be strengthening their position and everyone else's as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blankenharm, what a breath of fresh air for this committee. I think you've been down a path where we should have a conversation about what would be some of the irritants and some of the biggest impediments to the growth in our processing and capacity sector? You talked about government, paraphrasing, but government sometimes needs to just get out of the way and allow the private investment to come in and do that job. So what would be three of the biggest irritants that is causing us not to attract that private investment into our agriculture and processing and capacity sector?
Yeah, you can take any three of the ones that I listed in my presentation earlier. But if I wanted to focus, foreign labor is a big problem. The way the temporary foreign labor rules work today, it is absolutely atrocious. You know, the example I gave earlier about the Nova Scotia plant being shut down due to COVID-19. And so, you know, we have catchers that catch the birds in the barn. Not a very glamorous job, not a really high-paying job. And for the most part in Canada today, a lot of that is done by foreign workers.
Okay. Can I ask a more direct question? Is we've heard a couple people talk in this committee about some of the issues around internal trade, non-trade tariff barriers, and the fact where some meat can be inspected in Nova Scotia, but then that meat can't be sold anywhere else, and just issues with reducing red tape and allowing for the market to decide where and when products should be sold. Are there some of those issues that you've ran into that is hampering our ability to allow producers to basically create an atmosphere where they can be successful?
One area where I've seen some great discrepancy is CFIA. They're all supposedly reading the same handbook, but there seems to be various versions of it. And so what one plant can do, a neighboring plant, you know, may have nowhere near the restrictions. That is extremely problematic when you're trying to compete and the playing field is not level. That would be one of the examples that I really struggled with when I was running processing plants, that the rules were not consistent with our own CFIA.
And one last thing, when it comes to taxation, I also know that private investment will go to where it is able to make the biggest impact and where they're able to be successful. Are some of the new taxes that are brought in, I'd be referencing a carbon tax and a few other taxes and fees that we've seen increase and will continue to increase over the years. Is that one of the reasons why we may not have some of that foreign investment and private investment that you were talking about?
Correct. The money will go to where you're being attracted to. So the money's going to go where the risk and the stability is there, and there's little fear of government reprisal or government taxes trying to claw back any profit that you're trying to make. So yeah, the more we put those restrictions in place, the more we restrict our ability to attract capital, which is the reason why I talked about investment tax credit. To me, investment tax credits are a fantastic way to reward those that invest and those that are successful.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Glencairn. And we'll go to Mr. Lewis for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Steinley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both the witnesses for being here. I appreciate that very much. Maybe I would start by asking Ms. Sullivan to something that we haven't talked about when we talk about a shortage of skilled trades is possibly people entering the market, students and young people entering the market. It's something that we haven't talked about yet. The reason I know I mention it is because I've got a post-secondary school, Conestoga College here, which has the Institute of Food Processing Technology right here in Waterloo region. And that provides education, training, research, technical experience with the food processing industry. So have you looked into programs to try and bring in a new workforce? This is a generation that's looking for work and has ideas and is very forward thinking. Have you looked in ways that there are programs that we can help get young people into the workforce and address some of these shortages of skilled labor that we have?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think that students are a huge potential workforce for us. There is a program in Ontario, for example, that was developed a few years ago, Taste Your Future, that was very much social media based, very much focused on raising awareness of our industry as a potential job or career opportunity, and also the range of jobs that we offer. And yes, absolutely working with the colleges and the universities, and looking at apprentice programs and placements, internships, my apologies, and co-op programs, because that is a huge potential. And what companies say is that when they do have a co-op student, it's really important for them to sort of continue that relationship, because even that at the individual level, that individual becomes a potential lifetime worker for them and contributor to the company. So 100% from a domestic standpoint, youth are important. I think we also have to think through the potential to look at underrepresented groups, like groups that maybe are challenged to get into the workforce, and how we help them overcome those challenges. That's something that's really hard to do at a company level. That is absolutely something where we really do need governments to help us. This can be about new Canadians, refugees, and then having to work through resettlement services, working with First Nations communities, even to understand the transportation requirements and ability to get people to the plant. So I think there is a potential workforce there as well, but I think that it is probably unrealistic to think that individual companies are going to be able to figure out how to overcome those barriers.
No, I thank you very much. And you know what, you mentioned co-op, which I did not mention, which is great. New Canadians, which is also great. First Nations. So you're saying that it could help to have governments, whether it's provincial or federal, to maybe share best practices, or if there are any other best practices you could share for the record here, it would really it would help us possibly put some sort of program together. So if you know of any others now, I would love to hear about them.
Sure. So having the local colleges focus on programs that are geared to food processing, like Conestoga College, absolutely. I think as well, this is often at the provincial level, but there's a leadership role for the federal government in taking a look at how we actually certify skilled trades. Are there possibilities for more flexible approaches to certification? Micro certification, for example, to certify skilled tradespeople for sort of a micro set of skills that are important for our particular sector, rather than taking 5-6 years for full certification before people can actually do a job. That's really critical. We, in fact, put an application in for funding to look at that project last fall, and unfortunately, it wasn't accepted. But I think 100% the federal government needs to take a leadership role in seeing what skilled trades look like across the country, because we have a massive shortage, not just in this industry, but also in manufacturing. And, you know, manufacturing, I think sometimes gets overlooked as being old-fashioned. It's not. It's a massive employer in this country. We are the largest manufacturing sector, so we are the largest among manufacturers, and this is a sector that needs attention.
And to add to that, the work stays here. You know, the work stays in our own communities 100%. So just with the rest of my time, I just wanted to acknowledge the sacrifices that the frontline food processors have made, and they need to be recognized. Another thing we haven't talked about is the potential to learn how we've protected our workers through this pandemic, and what kind of measures that might stay as we extend past this pandemic to help further productivity. There are lessons to be learned how we can help protect our workers.
There are 100%. And, you know, bear in mind when the pandemic first...
Sorry, Ms. Sullivan, I have to cut you off here. Thanks, Ms. Sullivan. Thanks, Mr. Lewis. We're a little bit over time, but we'll go with Mr. Perron, very tight. On va tiendre ça serré. Allez-y, Mr. Perron, pour 2 minutes.
Go ahead, 2 minutes and a half. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't think I would have, there would be enough time for me. Mr. Blancarn, you said that supply management was a good system, but producers were only a part of it. So what should be changed?
I don't seem to have the translation.
Est-ce que la traduction marche, fonctionne? Il y a des problèmes avec la traduction?
Is interpretation working? Can you hear interpretation? Test, test. This is the English interpretation. 1, 2, testing. Can you hear the English interpretation channel?
I hear you now.
Okay, go ahead. Vas-y, Monsieur Perron.
Donc, on recommence.
So we'll start over. So, Mr. Blancarn, you first, when speaking about supply management, you said that it's a good system, but it could be improved. They should be modernized, and that producers were only one chain in it. Could you say more about that in 30 seconds?
Yes, as I say, they're one cog in the wheel. They supply the raw product, but then the processor has to take that raw product and turn it into something that the consumer wants. And the problem with chicken supply management, and it's not the same in all supply management, but in chicken supply management, the producer, the way the system is set up, the producer controls the supply. They're guaranteed a price. The more they produce, the more they make. So there's no appetite for them to produce less to keep the supply equal to the demand in the country. And current COVID-19 has been really, really.
Mais est-ce que...
But then, sorry to interrupt you. Isn't supply being adjusted right now according to the market? Or with the market, rather?
No, there is still way too much chicken being produced in this country. The producers will not cut back their supply because when they cut back their supply, they make less money. And so the processors are bleeding. As I said earlier, something that should sell at $3 or $4 is selling for, was selling just before Christmas at 50, 60 cents a kg.
In the current situation where it seems we're lacking processing power, I'm trying to understand what's happening.
Lincoln.
That's the reason why I say that supply management, especially in the poultry sector, needs to modernize.
Thank you.
There needs to be some consequence.
Thank you, Mr. Blancarn. Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes. Merci, Monsieur Perron.
Great, thank you, Chair. Ms. Sullivan, in your earlier exchange with Ms. Rude, you were talking about the enormous costs that have been borne by the industry dealing with COVID-19, particularly how the floor plan has had to change in many food processing centers to deal with physical distancing and so on. I'm curious, as you look forward into the future, and hopefully by the end of 2021, we're well on our way to having most of the population vaccinated, and we really have those numbers down. How is the industry going to adjust? Like, are there plans to go back to the way the floor plans were set up before COVID struck? Like, what lessons have you taken from the pandemic should another one strike us in a decade's time? I'm just curious as to what kind of planning is going on for how those floors are organized as we head towards recovery.
So right now, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and we're obviously in the middle of the second wave, and things are probably worse, or recently have been worse than they ever have been. So no, companies aren't at this point anywhere near thinking of planning for rolling things back. If anything, I mean, I think that we're not going to see much changes or even planning until we see a critical mass of the population vaccinated, and we start to hear from the experts about what the risk level is of the virus transmitting. Even at that point, I think we are going to see some changes in plants that are permanent. So, for example, plants have put in walkways and barriers so that people can't pass each other. It's a one-way, similar to what you see in grocery stores, but you can only go one way. I think it'll be a long time before you see that change. I think it'll be a long time before you see the enhanced cleaning, a long time before you see any of the changes that we've had to make be reversed. Some of those costs have been incurred and they won't be incurred again, and some are ongoing, like PPE, additional cleaning, health screening. Even if you've got an employee who is diagnosed with COVID, as an employer within the plant, you do the search within the contact tracing within the plant. Public health doesn't come in and do that. So the employer does all the contact tracing within the plant, watching security cameras to see what employee may have contacted another employee. There's massive, massive costs that are involved in that, and I think those will be around for quite a while.
I think that gets me close to the end of my time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Thank you. So at this time, this is the end of our session, and I'd like to thank Mr. Blancarn and also Ms. Sullivan for their really insightful statements. So thanks to everyone. We'll see you on Thursday, and take care. We'll see you on Thursday. Meeting adjourned.
Bye-bye.